Hi there, mattphilleo in studio. Welcome to Teaching Tuesdays, painting with the glazing technique. Still working on this huge 48 by 72 portrait and made a little bit of progress here on it, but just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I just want to take a couple minutes here to say hello. I'm going to go over to my computer really quick and then we'll get started. And we have Mangala online. Nice to see you here, Mangala. And so glad you could join us here today. How's it going in your part of the world? And where Mona's online. Hello, Mona. Nice to have you here again. It's a nice Tuesday here in Wisconsin. A nice Tuesday here in Wisconsin. We've got 40-degree days now, so the weather is completely shifted. I think last time we did this, it was quite a bit warmer, but right now, man, it's heading into winter time. I hate to say it. I hope we get some Indian summer, but I'm not holding my breath. How is it over where you guys are at? I'm just going to check the computer really quick here. In fact, I'm going to move it over just a little bit so I can see it better. So we've got, it's raining and cool where Mona's at, and I think you're up in Canada. So that's not surprising. Thunder showers in India. Yep, and we have Marcus online. Hello, Marcus. Nice to have you here. Razvan, nice to have you here. Yeah, it's we're heading into fall. We're having some beautiful colors on our trees right now as well. I'm going to be doing a art show this weekend, and you might have seen that if you saw my blog post, Falling Leaves Art Tour, and that's kind of a nice drive out in the country, and you get to see different artists within their studios, chat with them, see all kinds of different artwork. I mean, there's, of course, paintings, drawings, photography, ceramics, stained glass, alpaca wool creations, jewelry. I mean, all kinds of different artwork, and that's going to be coming up this weekend. So as soon as I'm done with this project here, I'll be shifting into getting ready for the show mode, and I'll be framing some paintings, maybe getting a couple of prints done, last minute. And so, yeah, I'll be looking forward to being there out in the country. It's going to be cool, but, it'll be nice because we'll be partially indoors. And the place that I stay at, the people there, they're good friends, and they just treat you like a king. And they feed you like a horse. So they treat me just like part of the family there, and they have wonderful meals, and it's just a great time getting together and meeting folks and talking about artwork and maybe making a few sales too. That's always good as well. So anyway, so nice you guys could be here today, and thank you for your kind words on the show. I appreciate that. So what I'm going to do here is be respectful of your time, because you're here to watch some painting and hopefully learn a couple techniques. And anyway, I'm just so glad you could join me here today. So I'm going to start with my usual prayer, and we'll get started. Father, I just ask you bless this time, and thank you, Lord, that you give us all as artists a talent and an ability to paint. Other skills as well, but the artists that are here and watching, you've given them a talent to paint and to represent, on a canvas, the three-dimensional world they see. So Lord, I ask that you would bless them in their painting, that you would give them inspiration, creativity, provision for, if they do commissioned artwork, give them new commissions. Bless them in all ways, Lord. And I just ask you bless this time and enable me to paint this picture well, capture the details, the likeness, the shading, so that this portrait would be a blessing to the clients, and that be able to teach some skills as well, and just grow in my own painting skill. And together we'd all get better at painting. And so bless us in it, in Jesus' name, amen. All right, so now you can see I've gotten a little bit of progress since last week, not a lot. I still had some other things to attend to. I think the painting is going to accelerate very quickly toward the end, especially after I get done with the art show. So after that's all done, I'm going to really be concentrating a lot of time on this, and I think you're going to see it progressing pretty quickly. But I did do a video session in between the last live video, last Tuesday, and then this. So if you're registered for the class, and you have access to it, I think you just had to share it with a couple of people. It's just kind of an incentive to share. And if you shared it with a few people, then you would have access to all the videos recorded, and you'll get a couple bonus videos as well. But anyway, I probably will be doing a few more videos, and I'll put them within that course. And that'll be at realisticacrylic.com in the courses section. So if you're registered and you share this class, you can get access to that. So just want to let you know about that. All right, now, what I want to do, and what I did last week, or actually in a little bit this week, was I worked mostly on the background. I added some different tones and shading, just darkening the trees overall, trying to get it a little more in line with what we see in the reference photo. And it's a slow process. I mean, I'm going to take my time because this is a really big project for me. I think I'm going to do a little bit of that first off, and then I'm going to segue into working on the figures a little bit more. I always try to mix it up and just make sure I'm covering the whole canvas and not just concentrating on one little area to the exclusion of other areas. So that's very, very important. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a little bit of phthalo green. And if you watch my painting projects before, my classes, you'll notice I don't always have phthalo green on my palette. I mean, a lot of times I'll just have ultramarine blue, but in this case I have phthalo green because, well, there's so much green within the painting. So your palette is gonna change based on the needs of your portrait. And so anyway, I grabbed some raw sienna, and I just mixed the two together. And phthalo green by itself is just going to be way too vivid. And I could use Indian yellow, but then that tends to make the green a little too vibrant. So this color here is going to work very, very well for the mid-tones and for the darker tones within the trees. Now, as we get into the really dark values, then I'm going to shift into using ultramarine blue and raw umber dark to get those really dark values. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of work out of the bottom here. And really mix that with the matte medium thoroughly. By the way, if you have any questions on anything as you're watching, just go ahead and put that in the chat. Just go ahead and put that in the chat, and then I will answer those once I have a little break on my painting. So what I'm doing is just establishing a gradation as we get to this top portion of trees. So within the picture, there is a little bit, oh, that's a little too dark there. There's an area where it kind of blends into a highlighted area, and I want to establish that gradation. I'm also going to strengthen by adding what I call a more generalized value over this whole area. Now, as I do that, we still have some of these smaller values within, but I want to just darken that whole area. And so what I'm trying to do is just make this this area of trees look like it's actually protruding out of the hill, and just pushing that idea of three-dimensionality. So I'm going to look at my reference photo here on my Kindle, and I have a couple printed off as well. And as I get into more of the detailed work and things get a little further along, I might actually print off some more photographs of close-ups so I can really get them where I need them on the canvas. It's just so important to have your reference photo very, very close to what you're working on. You really want to be looking at that and not just painting what you think you see, but what you actually do see. It looks like this part up here on the top, I misinterpreted that. That actually should be a little bit lighter. So we're going to adjust that. I was looking at the wrong clump of trees and I was painting that. I got a little lost within the reference photo. That's easy to do because these trees really have so many different areas, and it's hard to distinguish what part is what when you're looking at this, section here within the reference photo. So I mean, I have to identify, okay, there's this big mass of trees right here, and that corresponds to that. If you can see that, I don't know if you can see this, it's so small on your screen. And then there's that little dark spot right there, and that's going to correspond to that dark spot. And then there's this dark spot here, and that's going to correspond to that one there. And so I have to be able to identify those and not lose my place. And you might say, well, Matt, is that really necessary? I mean, they're trees. How can you go wrong? It's just random patterns. Well, the thing is if we're not following what we see in the reference photo, our tendency is going to be to paint things actually overly patterned, and they're going to be they're going to end up being too artificial looking. So you want to really follow your reference photo and let that be your guide. Okay, so I'm just blending out of this darker value. That would be probably almost, that one spot will be about as dark as it gets within the trees. There's other areas within this value key, and the value key is just a term that means how the values relate to each other as a whole. And so I have to look at that dark splotch over there. Can you guys see that? I'm going to move out of the way. The dark splotch there in the reference photo on my Kindle, and that matches the values down here. And they're almost black. But I have to keep in mind, keeping all these values very similar. Now, right now, this is way, way too light, but it is going to get darker as I add more layers. And yeah, you could paint it opaque. You could paint it opaque and put, the highlights on top. But I like to do it with the glazing technique because I think it gives it more depth. And on a large painting, you really can notice that depth. Customers will notice it. They know that I do this as my style. I mean, they've followed my work for a while, and I think they want something that's representative of my style, which is the glazing technique. All right, so I want to darken actually within here a little bit more. Now I think I painted on that side, so I'm going to have to start over here because I don't want to paint over something I just did. Whoops. Let's get that. Let's enlarge that a little bit here. Okay. So I'm going to work right in here, and we're getting this area just to the right of those trees. Can you guys see that? Now I'm looking at my screen here. I see a couple of comments popping up. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Even if you have a question that's not related to this painting, I would be happy to answer it for you here. You know, I'm here for you to help you in your painting any way I can. And yeah, so go ahead and let me know if you have any questions. Just put them in the chat box. Say in just a few minutes, I'm going to answer any questions you have. For right now, I'm just, again, darkening the darkest value. This would be the area that has the darkest value on the trees. Yes, I know this is realistic acrylic portrait school, but we do have to concern ourselves with backgrounds for our portraits. So I think that this can come in handy for you. There are times when landscapes and portraits kind of merge together. So I'm just going along and just blocking this in with this nice 1-inch brush, just enjoying the process. I don't have to rush this. I mean, I do want to get it done as quickly as I can because, you know, I'm getting paid by the project and not by the hour, but I want to enjoy the process. And, you know, I'm not working on an assembly line. I'm an artist, and you guys are artists, and that's one of the wonderful things about being an artist is that you get to enjoy your process. And, you know, if you wanted to have a different job, you could do that. But, you know, some I know aren't doing art full time. You know, you have other jobs and you're doing this as a hobby, and that's okay too. You know, it's just for whatever works for you in your life. For me, I want to enjoy the process as well, you know, and I don't want to enjoy it so much that it takes me 5 years to paint this, but just balance, I guess. And that's what we're striving for, is balance. So again, you can see with the glazing technique, it does allow you to get a lot of blending and nuances and shading. Eventually, the top layers are going to start getting a little more opaque. I will be putting in highlights on the top. I'll be kind of matching, you know, I should say the general value for the mid-tone, and then I'll be popping in some highlights, and that'll really bring out those branches and leaves on the trees. But I'm not there yet. And I will need a different yellow. I have this Indian yellow, and that's just too reddish orange. I might have mentioned that last week. I gotta order some of that azo yellow. It looks more like canary yellow, and I'm gonna need that, I think, to get these highlights on the trees. So I haven't needed that color for a long time because I haven't painted anything with this much green in it. And some of this green is really vivid too. Like this green over here in the foreground is extremely vivid. So I'm really going to need that color to capture that accurately. All right, so I'm just darkening this and work all the way across and get down over there to the end. And then I'm going to see if you have any questions here. I'm going to stop just for a moment, answer any questions you might have. So let's see here. Oh, and we got Patty online. Hello, Patty. Nice to have you here. Okay, so Lisa asks, I have a problem with acrylic colors. These are dry quickly. Is there any material put in? I'm not sure what your question is exactly, but it looks like you do have that problem with acrylics drying too quickly. And I have answered that question before for other folks. Main answer is you want to spray your palette, you know, every 15 minutes or so with a mist of water. So you just use a spray bottle, spray that with the mist. When it's not in use, you want to put it in a plastic container. You can buy those at stores, usually department stores. And then as far as extending the fluidity of your paint, if you use matte medium, it does take paint that's actually halfway dry and it makes it usable. So that's a solution for that. Mangala asks, Matt, do you use a retarder? Do you use a retarder to keep your paints moist? No, I do not. I tried using a retardant medium when I first started acrylic painting. It was very frustrating. It's frustrating to have it dry slow, so slow that I couldn't layer over it quickly, but it still dried faster than oils. So it didn't keep the working time going for days like oil paints would. So for me, that was very frustrating. Some people like it. I personally don't like it. I like my layers to dry as quickly as possible. I want them to dry quickly so I can go ahead and put another layer on as soon as I can, because that's part of the glazing technique, is just to keep adding those layers again and again and again. Okay, Artifacts asks, I wish I could afford your classes. I cannot get skin tones. My portraits look like garbage. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. But I tell you what, Artifacts, there's a lot of good tutorials for free on my YouTube channel, so take advantage of those. It doesn't have the complete step-by-step process, but at least you'll be getting some good tips that you can utilize. And if you go to realisticacrylic.com, I have some articles there. So there's videos and articles written that can help you in your portrait process. If you sign up for my email class, I have kind of a brief email class. It's not like my actual paid courses, but it does give you some good tips. So you could sign up for that as well. And I hope that would help you out. Just keep working at it and you'll get better. Yep, Mongola asks, acrylic medium is what you use. What about water while painting? Nope, I don't use just water. Water will thin out the binder in the acrylic resin, and it tends to make the paint kind of pool up within the canvas texture. And it ends up making your washes look very grainy. Plus, like I said, it weakens the binder in acrylic, and it can cause bad adhesion. It's just not a good way to go. It's much better to use clear acrylic. Matte medium is just clear acrylic polymer without the pigment. So you wanna get the good stuff, and if you're able to purchase it in bulk, like I do at Nova Color. Not sure how that would work with freight over to India, but I can buy it by the gallon for what you pay for a pint at the art store. But either way, I would recommend the medium, matte medium. And Mona asks, how do you work out your prices, by size or hours? That's a good question. I charge by the size, and detail. If you go to my old website, that's more geared towards my commissioned work, and I need to get that updated. My brother actually runs that, so I don't control the content on it so much. But anyway, if you go to that website, Tradition Studio, and you hit on the left-hand side, there's a button that says rates. That has my pricing structure, and I base it on size and detail. So I actually kind of had a little formula that I worked out that, if you start off with one 5x7, just a small little painting at one subject, it's $125. And then if you go up to a few subjects, it increases exponentially, all the way up to $10,000 for a 48x72. And this is a 48x72 with 5 subjects because of all the detail in the background. So even though we have 2 subjects in the foreground with the people, the background and everything makes it to have so much detail that I charged 5 subjects for it. And for my pricing structure, I think that's just a little above $10,000 right now. So that works out well for me, and it works out well for the customer. They don't have to wonder, hey, is he just going to waste time and try to get billed all these hours? They know exactly what they're going to pay when they commit to the project. They put down their down deposit, and they end up paying what I said they'd pay at the beginning. So there's no surprises. And for me, that's an incentive, because it makes me have to work a little harder, because the quicker I work, without sacrificing quality, is going to end up, giving me better pay per hour. So that's just how I do it. Okay, so we have Anne from the Netherlands. Hello, nice to see you here. Okay, well, I'm gonna get back. So let me know, did I answer all of your questions? If I did, if you want to just give me like a thumbs up or a yes, just to let me know that I answered all your questions, that would be wonderful. And oh, Rosina asks, this is my first time here, what size is that canvas again? Yep, it's a 48 by 72, 48 inches by 72 inches, or 4 by 6 feet. I'm not sure how that works out for meters, because here in America, we're still enslaved to the old standard system of inches and feet, even though I will confess that the metric system is way better because it's divisible by 10. But, you know, we're kind of slow at changing here in America, so we still think about inches and feet and that kind of thing. But that's all right. Eventually we'll change. Get a quick drink of water. So yeah, this is 4 by 6 feet. And you can see as I put my hand on it, you can get a sense of the size of it. I have done larger paintings, not freestanding paintings, but murals. And I've done murals that are 6 feet by 30 feet long. But this is the largest canvas painting I've done. I know it's possible to do even bigger, but man, oh man, that's a pain to try to ship that anywhere. All right, so now I'm going to segue into painting on the people. I still have some open area on my palette. What I want to do is I want to work on the woman's clothing here, and I want to darken the jacket just a little bit more. There are some areas that are highlighted, but this basically is just white right now. And in the reference photo, it's got more of a pinkish tone. So I have to be careful. I want to pick something. I want to pick a red that has just a little more of a yellowish tone to it. And a rule of thumb is, as your colors get lighter, they're generally going to shift to a little bit of a warmer color. So if you have something that's red, your darker values is going to be more to the magenta side. I'm not going to say you're going to use magenta, but it's going to be more to the magenta side. And then as you get towards the highlights, you want to mix more orange and yellow into it. Now, I'm not saying use yellow, but I'm just saying your color has got to be a little more towards that side. So I have organic red orange, and that would be like cadmium red, Indian yellow. And you could also use cadmium yellow or cadmium orange. And I want to wipe off some of that excess pigment. Make sure I have my medium all clear. I put down some fresh matte medium because if I use the medium here, I could pick up some of that green, and that would totally mess up the color. That would totally muddy it up. So here on something that's very, very light, you got to make sure your colors are pure. You don't want them mixed with anything wrong. So I'm just going in and I don't know, I could actually cover the whole area very broadly without paying attention to detail, or I could go in and try to capture just a few of those nuances that I can see, like right here, it's darker, but then there's this little highlight. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little highlight right above this wrinkle in her coat. And then down here, I can add just a little bit to the nuance below it. And just extend that out a little bit. Now up in here, there's a little bit of a shadow right by her shoulder. And I want to capture that. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of this darker mix. You can see it's somewhat more opaque up here, a little bit more translucent, and then we just have the medium here. So I can grab from the slightly more opaque mixture, and I'm going to darken upwards. And there's just this little divot here in her coat that I want to capture. Now, as we get close, there's some really fine details and wrinkles. I'm going to have to go back. With a highlight color to capture those. Now I'm going to take some organic red orange and darken this mix just a bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of a mid-tone right here because I want to establish a crease. There's a crease right here in her jacket. And so I just brushed that across, and I didn't blend that out because it actually does have a very harsh edge based on what I see on the reference photo. Now, as you're watching this, you're just probably not seeing a lot happening, you know, because the camera tends to blur things up. What I'm doing is probably very subtle and hard to see what's actually taking place. And all I have to say is that I think as we get closer to the end, you're going to see some greater shifts. And like I said, I am going to try to get some videos in between these sessions, just so you can see some of the things that we can't do during the live class here. But what I did right now is I just darkened this area on her jacket. And by the way, you know, when you're capturing reds, you really want to keep that luminosity very vibrant. So I went maybe a little bit more orangish than I needed to. But if I look at the photo and I say, you know what, I think I need to make that a little more magenta, a little less orangish. It's very easy to adjust it to that magenta side, but it's a little harder to adjust it to the orangish side. And the reason for that is because I can add some titanium white, you know, and then some red here and make a glaze, and I can quickly shift that over to more of a magenta color. But if I need to lighten it up and get it to the orangish side, I have to add white, you know, to lighten it up. And when you add white, you're cooling down your color. So then you really have to add a lot more yellow to compensate for that. And it's not as good as just glazing it in. So anyway, all that to say, yeah, I think that might be a little too orangish, but that's all right. I'll just shift that later towards the end. Right now, I'm still more concerned about the value structure than I am about the color. And like I've taught before, if you've watched my other lessons, values are more important than color. They just are. As long as your colors are not crazy. I mean, you paint skin tones and somebody has green skin, like the trees. Okay, that might be, then the color might be more important than the value. It would just throw it off so much. But if you get the color on your skin tones in the ballpark, you know, that's going to be good. But if you have your values way off, like you've got, you know, shadows under the eyes that are too dark, or, you know, no shadows under the cheeks, you know, just shadows in the wrong places. Doesn't matter if you have that skin tone down perfectly. It's not going to look right. So anyway, all that to say that as I'm painting this, I'm still concentrating more on the values than the color. And with the glazing technique, towards the end, you can shift the colors. If you are in the ballpark the whole time and you had it close, you can easily shift it over. And it won't be hard to do it. It can only take maybe a couple layers to do that. All right, so, oh, I see, like right here, this area is white. I'm going to use a smaller brush, actually, because that brush is not giving me enough precision. So I'm going to take this small brush, I think it's a 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to, what I want to do is just go in and get a couple of the divots within this area. Just a small little area. Excuse me. And so I don't want that to be just straight white. And then here, we're going to darken that just a bit so that her hands can pop out. By the way, I know you're looking at this and probably thinking it's really hard to see because, you know, the camera is so far away from everything that's taking place. When I get closer towards the end and I'm working more on just the figures and on their faces, I think what I'm going to do is set the camera up a little closer so you can see more of what's going on. It's just that in this step, I'm kind of jumping all over the place and working on the foreground and the background, and you know, I have to keep the camera far enough away to get everything in. All right, so again, using just this mixture that I have, not really mixing anything new, and then I want to get a couple like little details, like here on her jacket, there's a little wrinkle right below this main triangular wrinkle. You can see that triangle. But now there's another one that kind of pops out. I don't think I even sketched that in. I don't think I sketched it in at all. I'm just going to paint it in right now. I want to be careful, you know, to make it look like the reference photo. I don't want to have it meet up with this line here. It actually comes up above it. And then there's kind of a little highlight in between the two of them that I'll have to put in later. Saying layer because I'm always thinking of layers when I'm painting. No, I'll have to put that in later and bridge the two together. And you know, when you're using the glazing technique, you have to have a lot of patience because it does take time to develop everything. So if you're thinking, man, it takes just forever to do a painting with glazes, well, this is a big painting. You know, this is you know, like I say, 4 by 6 feet. But on an 8 by 10, I can get a 8 by 10 done in say about 6 or 7 hours. I can get a 16 by 20 done in about 12 hours. So, you know, I think that's a reasonable amount of time for a painting. You know, if I was doing it opaquely, I could get it done faster, but it just doesn't have that same depth to it. And you really, really notice it more in person than you do with a photo online. You know, I had a client that when I sent her the proof for the painting I did, and this was just this year, she kind of liked it. She liked it all right when she saw it, you know, on the photo I sent her, you know, the email photo. But then when she saw it in person, she just loved it. She just loved it. She could really see the vibrancy in the colors. And that's not something you can see as well through the camera lens, but in person, you really, really notice it. So if you haven't done a painting with the glazing technique, I would recommend just to give it a shot and try it, see how you like it. And you can always make it a part of your technique, even if you don't use it all the time. So I'm adding a few wrinkles here to the side of her clothing. By the way, if you have any more questions, just feel free to put them in the chat box and I will be sure to answer them here in a little bit. I just want to be respectful of your time and get you out of here at noon. I want to get out of here at noon because that's my lunchtime. But I want to make sure that I'm mostly doing painting work here. All right. Now I'm going to add just a few highlights to this side. It would be so cool if you guys could just join me here in my studio. Last year I was teaching some classes and we did an all-day paint-a-thon. So I actually had the students, begin and complete their portrait all in one day. And that was amazing. It was a small portrait, but they got it done. I mean, they actually, one of the guys, he never painted before, and he did a portrait of his dog, and he was just so happy that he could paint a picture of his dog. And he never painted before, you know, so it was really cool to see that happen. But I try to get that, you know, with my online classes, really make it as close as you can to being with me here in the studio. So I'm adding just a few nuances inside here. And these shifts are very gradual. You know, I'm probably being a little pickier with this painting than I would some of my other projects, just because of the size. I really want it to be special for these people. And so I'm going maybe a little slower than I usually would, but eventually it's all going to have to come together. I've got to get this done by the end of the month. So I'm really going to have to put in some good work in the next few weeks. And okay, I'm grabbing some naphthalene crimson. So we have organic red orange right there, naphthalene crimson right there. So you can see the shift. It's orange, a little bit redder, a little bit more magenta with that alizarin crimson. Now I'm going to grab some of this naphthalene crimson, and I just want to get the color within here a little more reddish because it is darker. Yeah, this brush might be a little too small for the job, but I'm going to stick with it so I can quickly switch back into getting some of these detailed wrinkles. They have to be established at some point, and so now is the time to do that. I want to make sure I'm allowing you to see what I'm doing here. And then, you know, I have these harsh wrinkles right here, and I'm going to just blend them out by adding a lighter color above them. That's the heart and soul of the glazing technique. So I'm using what we call a segmented blending technique. And that's where you take a color that's a little bit lighter, a glaze that's a little bit lighter than what you have down, and you overlap. You paint on top of it and a little bit above it into the lighter value. And so what that does is it gives you a really, really nice gradation. And so, you know, if I were to, if I can demonstrate this for you somehow, I have a little practice canvas here. Let me just show you what I'm talking about so you can actually see this segmented glazing technique. So if I were to paint this down, for example, okay, you just spread it out so it's nice and even, using crisscross strokes in both directions, vertically and horizontally. Now, this would have to dry. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let this dry. I'll come back to that, but I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So just hold on to that thought. And we'll come back after this dries, and I'm going to show you the segmented glazing or segmented blending technique within the glazing technique. All right, because I know it's really hard to see it on this small canvas, or I should say on this large canvas, but with the camera far away, it's hard to see it. What can I grab here for a brush? We'll just stick with that 1/4 inch flat. I tell you what, let me see if you just have any questions right now, and I'll answer them quickly, and then we'll do maybe another 10 minutes yet, and we'll finish up. Any questions? Okay. Sharon asks, what way have you found to be the best way to ship your paintings? That's a great question. So, so Sharon, I have a client out in Brooklyn that I do rabbi portraits for. And I've painted over 30 portraits of those rabbis. And anyhow, when I went to ship the first one, I was going to ship it in cardboard, you know, with 2 different boxes. You know, those little plastic, air-filled, whatever you call them, sealed air that cushions everything. You know, I went to package it up in that, and then gave him the shipping estimate because he had to pay for the shipping. And he said, "What? You don't? That's not how you ship artwork." Well, this guy, he's an art dealer. He has a gallery there, and he said the way you ship a 16 by 20 painting, and actually it can work for larger paintings too, on up to maybe 24 by 30. He said the way you ship those paintings is you sandwich them in between 2 pieces of mat board. So if you have a 16 by 20 canvas, that's a pretty typical size for a portrait. What you do is you actually would take 2 pieces of mat board, and they come in 16 by 20 sizes. You can order them off of eBay or wherever you want for 16 by 20 and get them pre-cut to that size. So you take 2 pieces of mat board, and what I do is I put a piece of plastic over it first, and then I put shrink wrap around that plastic to keep it in place, and I shrink wrap over the edges several times. Then I take those 2 pieces of mat board and I tape them together with plastic tape, you know, shipping tape. And then over the corners, I put skinny pieces of mat board that I've cut to size and bend, you know, in an L shape right over the corners and tape it up. And if you want to be extra safe, you can use 2 pieces of mat board over the top of the artwork, you know, where the image is, and on the underside, just have 1. And I tell you what, we shipped those many, many, many times. No damage. We only had damage happen 1 time, and that's when I started using 2 pieces of mat board instead of 1 on the top. And man, it keeps the shipping costs way down because you don't have all that cardboard. The size is smaller. It's very compact. So that's something you might want to try. And it does work for larger pictures too, but when you get larger than 24 by 30, that's where it gets too big. And you're going to need something to protect the canvas more. Okay. Anne asks, do you only use one kind of medium? I only use matte medium for painting, and that dries to a flat finish. And because of that flat finish, you have no glare that would get in the way of your painting. Because if you use something like a satin medium or a gloss medium, that will provide too much glare when you're painting, and it makes it hard to see your colors and your values. So matte medium is the stuff to use when you're painting. When you're done painting and you want to protect your painting with a varnish, then you want to use matte varnish. And matte varnish actually dries to a satin finish. So it's kind of semi-glossy. It's a really good sheen. If you want a little more glossiness in your paintings, you can add a little gloss medium to the mix. But when you have that satin semi-glossy sheen, it'll protect your paintings from dust. You can easily clean them, or your customers or clients can easily clean them. And it also will give them more richness and depth. You know, anything dark, like your blacks, will get darker. All the colors will look more vivid and more saturated. So it is a good idea to use that varnish over the top. And it also gives you a uniform sheen, so you don't have areas that are glossy and some that are dull. Just really makes it look professional. Mona asks, wish I lived closer to you. I'd be there in a minute. That would be fantastic, Mona. Who knows, maybe sometime. But it is wonderful to be here doing these live sessions. Yeah. Thank you for all the kind words. I appreciate that. Sharon asks, can you photograph the painting with matte varnish? Yes, you can. You just have to make sure that you don't have the sun shining on it directly. There is a really good resource on photographing your artwork outside by Mark Carter. Mark Carter is a oil painter, portrait painter. He's really, really good. I look up to him actually for inspiration in my work and getting better. He's really good. He's painted President George Bush, former President George Bush, and other well-known people, and it actually, hung in the White House, I believe. But he recommends a certain way of photographing your work outdoors, and he has a great video resource on that. So I'm going to see if I can find that and put up a link here in the video after we're done recording. You just want to make sure that you don't have any glare. You would set up your picture in outside when the sun is shining, but you would do it where there's a shadow, like underneath the eave of a building. And whoever is photographing the work should be wearing dark clothing, that kind of thing. Okay, Mona asked or mentioned, I shipped my big 2x4 foot horse to California, rolled up in tube. After moving from the frame, they want to put it back in the frame. Yeah, a lot of people do that. They'll take the canvas off of the stretcher, roll it up, and then people have to re-stretch it. You can certainly do that. Maybe the cost is lower to ship it that way. I would imagine it would be. But if you can keep it on the stretcher bars, make it easier for your client, I think that would be a good way to go. And 24 by 36 2x4 foot would be about the largest size you'd want to ship, sandwiched between mat board. I did do a commission for that gentleman out in Brooklyn, and it was a 24 by 36, and I used just mat board to protect the artwork, and it got there safely. So definitely get it insured. If you ship it via UPS, and if anything happens to your artwork, they'll reimburse you for your time, for the value of the work. So then you'd have to repaint it again or restore the damage. But it's definitely worth getting it insured. All right, well, I hope I answered all of your questions there. We might have just a couple more minutes. I guess I took a little longer to answer the questions. I'm going to do maybe just a few more minutes here, and then we'll get you guys on your way. Okay, what's one last thing I could do? I want to darken her hair. I'm going to shift gears, grab some raw umber dark, ultramarine blue, and matte medium to thin it out. Again, I want to just slowly shift this over to what it should be. But I want to go in here and darken her hair a little bit more. And basically, I can't see too many highlights on this right now. It's all kind of in shadow on the picture, on the reference photo. But as I pull from some different photo references, there are a few highlights, and I think it might be nice to capture those, because I am painting them looking younger than what they look like in the photo they sent me. So if you remember from before, they did send me some pictures when they were younger. And so this is the main reference photo, if you can see that, of the woman. And I think she really looks great there. I think it really captured her beauty, that photo. But I want to get some of that look in here, some of the highlights within her hair. And I think that'll really be nice. So I might have to add a few highlights in that I can't see within the actual reference photo. But just wanted to darken her hair a little bit there. And then let's also darken the man's hair a little bit. And we'll just add a couple. Well, let's see if I can grab a photo of him that might work for that. Of course, the lighting is going to be different since we're outside, but generally it gets darker where there's a part in the hair. You know, it's going to get darker at that point. And then in the middle of the part, you know, that's going to capture the light, and that's where you're going to have your highlights. So to get darker down here towards his ears, a little bit lighter on the top. Again, darker right there where the part in his hair is. I should get this part too. I kind of neglected that, but that portion below the visor is important as well. And then also darken this little spot by his ear. Use a smaller brush, see if I can capture that. All right. There we go. Okay, I'm going to close this up here and let you get on your way. Oh, wait. I can't leave this undone. Hold on a second. You know how we artists are. There's always one more thing. I can't believe I haven't painted the top of her hair. Been doing all this work below, and this portion is sticking up above her visor, and we've got to get that in there. There. Don't want to neglect that. All right, now for real, I'm going to close this up and put my palette away. Just show you really quick. You were kind of curious how to keep your palette moist. I'm going to spray it really quick with this spray bottle. Just have water in there. Just spray it all around a few times. And then I'll put it away. Seal it up within my container. I'll show that to you really quick. This is my container I use for holding my palette. It's a big storage container, and it just opens up like that. You can buy these anywhere. And then if you really want to keep it extra moist, you can have a little cup in here, put some water in, maybe a little rag, you know, so it doesn't spill out. And if you want to keep the mildew away, put some rubbing alcohol in with the water. And that's all you need, and it'll keep your paints nice and fresh for days and days, sometimes even a week or two. So that's it. So anyway, I'm going to see if there's any more questions here quick that I can answer before I go. Any questions, last questions for me before we call it a day? Patty, thank you for the kind words. Glad you enjoyed it. Always a pleasure to be here with you guys. Okay. Looks like no questions here, so I must have done my job in teaching. Fantastic. So anyway, just want to, again, thank you so much for joining me here. And if you haven't registered for this class, go to the link that I'll have at the bottom of the video after this is over. There's also a link in the first video that you'll find on my YouTube channel. And if you register, you will get access to all these videos at Realistic Acrylic. It's a way better experience for watching. No commercials or ads or any other things on YouTube to distract you. And I'll have a couple of bonus videos as well. Bonus videos that you won't see on YouTube there when you register. So I encourage you to do that. And thank you so much for watching. God bless you in your painting. And we will see you here, God willing, next week, Tuesday at 11 o'clock. All right. God bless you guys. See you later.